Hello and welcome to the Washington Institute. I'm Rob Satloff, the Segal Executive Director of the Institute, and I am grateful that you could join us for this very special event looking at the potential for Lebanon-Israel peace. Now, just a word of context. There's a lot going on in the Middle East, a lot going on in America's engagement in the Middle East. Just next week, the president of Syria will be making a first ever visit for someone in that position to Washington to see President Trump at the White House. The following week, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, is coming to Washington. There's intense diplomacy going on at the United Nations regarding the Security Council resolution endorsing the president's 20-point peace plan for Gaza. There is a lot of diplomacy, a lot of action, but yet there's someplace else where there's important discussion happening and there's important events happening. I will note that as we meet today, the Israel Defense Forces are operating in South Lebanon, operating against Hezbollah. This comes against the backdrop of nearly a year since the achievement of a ceasefire in the Israel-Hezbollah conflict, and several months of the government of Lebanon making some progress toward the disarmament of Hezbollah. There is, against this background, already an intense national discussion, certainly from the highest levels of the Lebanese government, including President Aoun, about the prospect of negotiations and perhaps, just perhaps, even making peace between these neighbors, Lebanon and Israel. It's a tall order. There's a long way to go. But is there a path forward for Lebanon-Israel peace? Now, just recently, I and two of my colleagues, Hanin Ghaddar and Ehud Yaari, published what we believe is one way to pursue that path, a roadmap for Israel-Lebanon peace. Today, I'm delighted that we have a very special policy forum discussion to take a close look at whether peace is an option for these two countries and how wise statespeople, statesmen, stateswomen may pursue this vital path forward. We're going to begin with a rare and very special conversation with one of Lebanon's most prominent members of parliament. I'm very delighted to welcome direct from Beirut, Member of Parliament, Fouad Makhzoumi. Mr. Makhzoumi is a member of parliament representing Beirut, the capital. He's a member of the Finance and Budget Committee, a member of the Public Works, Transportation, Energy, and Water Resources Committee of Parliament. He is a very prominent industrialist with business interests on 4 continents and is a leading voice in Lebanon's political scene. Mr. Makhzoumi, welcome to the Washington Institute. We got mute. There we go.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for the Washington Institute. I think you're doing a great job. At the end of the day, we need voices like yours in order to push the process forward. Peace is not a decision. It's the decision of the brave, and it's a process. And at some point, we need to start, and I believe the time is right.
Terrific. Well, then let me jump right into it with you, and I'm delighted that you're with us today. Since I know that you support the objective of peace, if your constituents in Beirut ask you why this is in their interest, why it's in Lebanon's national interest, what do you tell them?
Well, I mean, the way that Lebanon has been run since 1984 onward, since the Syrians and Hezbollah were in control of the deep state, they were in control of the political atmosphere and environment in this country. In 2019, we had a collapse of our financial system. whereby the militias, which is Hezbollah, was protecting the mafia that siphoned $140 billion of money, of Lebanese money. This is one. Secondly, there is no more institutions that's functioning well. The judicial system is collapsed. There is nothing that's happening, okay, that makes sense. Now, if I look at all of this, it means that the people are suffering from the status quo that we are in. And the status quo that we are in, because every few years, especially after 84, there has been a lot of people that they have been trying to say, we have an enemy called Israel, we need to go to our conflict for regional excuses which have nothing to do with Lebanon. Hezbollah is that person. Hezbollah is that militia. Hezbollah is the one that is controlling the deep state. So unless we take and we remove that pretext, by doing two things. First, we need to disarm the militia. And secondly, to remove that option of going to war every 10 years to destroy the country. And that's the only way forward is to get to a peaceful agreement between us and Israel.
Now, you just referred to the process of disarmament, to the objective of disarming militias so that the state can have a monopoly on arms. Now, this is a very controversial issue in Lebanon. Could you tell me your view about, first, the connection between disarmament and peace, and then how do you evaluate the progress that your government has made and is making toward fulfilling its commitment to disarm Hezbollah?
Hezbollah, basically, through Iran and Syria, they hijacked Lebanon in 84. And since until the collapse of the financial system and then the 2024, the cessation of hostilities that we signed with Israel, basically the whole country was hijacked by them. Now, if we have to move forward and for the people to feel more comfortable, as long as there's Hezbollah, as long as there is arms, it means there is no state. You cannot run a state. You cannot reconstitute your institutions that we have lost it for 15 years of civil war and now for close to about 24 years of post-civil war, because you have an army that is basically outside the control of the country. If we do not reinstitute the state of Lebanon through the government, through the parliament, through the army, so we have one army, one state, one presidency, one of everything, basically, we are in the abyss. And the problem is that Hezbollah is abusing that to take us to wars in order to control the Iranian agenda. We need to move on. Unless we can disarm Hezbollah, I don't believe we can establish the state. This is one. The second one is that Hezbollah, after the 2024 cessation of hostilities, we all know two things happened. First of all, Hezbollah voted for the president whose presidential statement was very clear, that there is disarmament of all militias, implementing the 1701, implementing the 27th of November agreement. There was a cabinet that was given the vote of confidence, including Hezbollah, and more so, Hezbollah is a participant and they have membership into that cabinet. So technically speaking, what Hezbollah is doing today, they are revolting against the state of Lebanon. It's not anymore that they are believed that they are a state within the state. They are revolting and there is a coup d'etat, attempt for a coup d'etat against the state. No, we need to disarm Hezbollah. We need to re-establish confidence of the people with their government. We need to establish the better relationship of Lebanon with the region and to move forward. If we do not do that, basically it will be very difficult to re-establish the Lebanon that we all hope that we can reach.
So there is some discussion about the reluctance of the Lebanese armed forces to actively and assertively disarm Hezbollah. Some are suggesting that perhaps a political understanding needs to be reached, that it's not so much forcible disarmament, but reaching a deal or an agreement with Hezbollah. What's your view of how the government should proceed with the process of disarmament?
As a member of the parliament, I've tried to understand exactly what is really the roadmap that has been set up by the government, the army, after the 5th of August decision to disarm Hezbollah. The government says that the army is doing their job and they have achieved 85% of whatever objectives they had. Naib Qasim, on the other hand, says we are rearming, we are reconstituting ourselves, and we can go to war against Israel.
He's the new Secretary General of Hezbollah. Yes, the successor to Nasrallah.
Correct. They're saying the international community is saying we don't see real progress. So I submitted a letter officially to the government demanding through the parliament to give us a very clear roadmap on the 2nd of October. What I've said, as a parliamentarian, what have you signed with Israel on the 27th of November? And as much as Hezbollah claimed that there is no negotiations, you know very well that on the 27th of November, the agreement that was announced by Najib Mikati, the then Prime Minister of Lebanon, was negotiated by Hezbollah directly, through Amos Hochstein and through all the American envoys, with basically, as you know, through the voice of Nabi Berri that happened. But effectively, it was Hezbollah that negotiated all of this. When we see all of this that's happening, today we are in a situation that the army is saying we've achieved all of this. Well, remember the agreement that we signed on the 27th of November, it gave us 60 days to disarm Hezbollah south of the Litani. Today, we are a year later, and we still see Israeli attacks on the members of Hezbollah, still bombing sites where they claim that there are caches, arms, drones, and everything else. So if we have really achieved what we are claiming that we have achieved, why is Israel finding more locations, more people to try to attack? Because in the agreement on the 27th of November, Israel was very clear, and so does the international community, that anytime Israel believes that there is a threat against the national security, they have the right to attack. So it means if they're doing it, so it means they have exactly that. What we are afraid of is that there is the political will by the government is weak, and they do not want to really confront the fact that the world and the United States in particular is getting sick and tired of us, because this is the game that Lebanon has played since the Taif Agreement since '89. We promised to do everything, we promised to deliver, yet we deliver very little. I believe it's time to put pressure to make sure that there is a timeline. I believe that for us to show the international community that we are serious, so that we can go and demand things from Israel, that the Litani, north of Litani, all the way to the Awali River, which is close to Saida, this has to be cleared by the end of the year from all Hezbollah and their arms, and then to work within the 6 months after that to clear whatever is left. If we do not do that, then I don't think anybody is going to take us seriously that we mean peace and we would like to protect Lebanon in the future.
And just to be clear, it's your view that the Lebanon Armed Forces has the means and capability to fulfill this task, correct?
Well, we have 60,000 people. What we understand from the latest report of the army, that they have allocated 9,500 troops to the south, which is roughly what has been suggested, even though the idea was to go up to 15,000. Our army is 60,000. The real force, the Delta force is about close to 20,000. So it means there are 40,000 army soldiers, officers, whatever you want to call them, that they are on the payroll of the government, but they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Let us try to restructure the army. Let us try to use these people that are on the payroll of the army to try to make sure we expedite the process of trying to disarm Hezbollah and all militias in the south of Litani. If we don't do that, I'm afraid that Israel is going to react negatively against Lebanon. And what we've seen, the destruction force that Israel has, and we are seeing it over the last 2-3 weeks. Today, in particular, there have been so many attacks. So I don't understand why the political class is delaying the inevitable. They are trying to encourage Israel to go and destroy whatever has not been destroyed so far. And still up to today, I do not understand what Hezbollah is going to achieve, except to be in compliance with the agenda of Iran, to try to keep a hot area in the south, and for Iranian purposes, not for Lebanese or anybody else's purpose.
All right, thank you. I think that was a very clear and powerful statement. Thank you very much. Let me go back to the concept of peace, which hopefully once the Lebanon fulfills the sorts of responsibilities you're talking about, we can build on this, and Lebanon and Israel can incrementally move toward a new relationship. When you think about peace, when you think about the prosperity that might come with peace, What's your path forward? Are there incremental steps that you see? What specifically would Lebanon look to from Israel directly and from other friends of peace around the Middle East and here in the United States to try to build this new future based on peace?
Let's start with the dividends of peace. Dividends of peace is basically, it means we do not have to rebuild every 10 years, the destruction about a war with Israel, which as long as Hezbollah and Iran are in control of that illegal arms, this is going to be the story every 10 years. From 2006 till 2024, the bill could run up to $30 billion. For what? For what reason? For what purpose? What did the Lebanese and the Lebanon make benefit of? Nothing out of that. This is one. Secondly, at least we can attract people to come back to the Lebanon because then there will be prosperity. Remember, in the 2010 and then up to 2018, basically our GDP grew up to about $58 billion. Now we're down to 25. We don't have jobs. People are leaving the country. Peace will give us prosperity. It's going to give us basically, we need to sort out the future of these children. But to be able to do that, we need to do a full demarcation. You see, a sovereignty of a country cannot be achieved if we don't have very clear borders. We need to do full demarcation with Israel, full demarcation with Syria, full demarcation with Cyprus. If we take that and we find a solution for that ambiguous Shib'a farm and Ghaddar village, basically we will be removing the pretext that Hezbollah is using to so-called liberate the land. Because all these arguments, Syria has to make a clear statement, and this is what I hope President Shara will make it clear as soon as possible. Is Shib'a farm Syrian or Lebanese? If it is Lebanese, then basically has to make it, then this will be part of the deal with Israel. And then basically we clear all of these pending issues. If it is Syrian, fine. Then let it be sure, and then we can go to courts internationally with Syria to argue this, but remove it from the pretext that this is occupied by Israel. Okay. If we look at trust, credibility, economical growth, trying to get the Lebanese back to their country, trying to build the South, trying to make sure that we get everybody to be involved into the process, then basically this is what we Lebanese are looking for to try to achieve. And I believe these can be done. But as a baby steps that we need to take in, in 1955, the Arab League has published a law, which is called the boycott of Israel, which has been abused by the Lebanese system to use it as as a tool against everybody that's trying to say, let's move this region forward towards peace. As you know, it started with the boycott of trade with Israel. It's becoming now a tool that can be used by Hezbollah, and it used to be by the Syrians and the deep state, to try to blame people that they are committing treason in relationship to Israel, because ultimately they added the word Israel to the word enemy. Now, if we can do that, then basically that would be good. If we cannot do it, because some of the Arab countries are still, let us work with our international friends and allies, at least to suspend that law now from the Arab League, in order not to be abused by the deep state in Lebanon against the people that are looking for peace.
So at least
I need to add one more thing. In 2002, the King of Saudi Arabia came to Lebanon, and we had the so-called Arab League meeting in Beirut, whereby we announced at that time the proposal land for peace, to try to establish the state of Palestine. For us in Lebanon, like all of the Arab world, the nostalgia of the Palestinian conflict is something that is there, and it's been there for years. We need to find a way forward. I know this is we as Lebanese, we can only suggest because it's not something that we can decide on. But this, if we can capitalize on the step that Saudi Arabia did in last months in the United Nations, whereby they convinced 158 countries to try to recognize Palestine. If we can find a solution for that, that's a very important part in order to remove from the pretext of politics in Lebanon. Because if we can do that, basically the other issues, which is the right of return and all of this, I think we can find solutions for it. Because at the end of the day, out of the 280,000 Palestinians that came to Lebanon in 1948, okay, and whoever is still alive, most of them, they married Lebanese women, and their children are Lebanese. So the issue of the right of return can be easily sorted out in this country. And if that is the case, even Saudi Arabia is willing to proceed with the Abraham Accord if we can find a solution for that. That will help us, all of us, to try to move forward, because at the end of the day, as we said, peace is a process, and we need all to be really moving into that direction.
All right. Well, thank you. That's a very important statement. I especially welcome your comment about suspending the implementation of the boycott regulations and what I assume is the anti-normalization laws that you're referring to. Let me ask you about a different factor, which is very important and hovering above discussion in Lebanon, and that is that parliamentary elections are on the horizon, scheduled for May 2026, just over 6 months from now. What, in your view, is the connection between peace, disarmament, and the elections? Are you on track to hold free and fair elections in Lebanon at the moment?
Look, our diaspora contributes about 30% of our GDP and repatriation of funds to our people. And if they have not been involved in it, the collapse would have been worse for Lebanon since the financial collapse in 2019. In 2017, we passed this lousy law that we are all contesting, in 2018, 2022, whereby they insisted, Hezbollah and their allies, that they would limit the role of the diaspora to only 6 members of the parliament, rather than to have their views about who should be elected for the whole parliament. So they said the diaspora will go for a slate of 6 members. This is a French concept. When the French had the French mandate, when they believed Algeria and Lebanon and all of these were French territories. So it was fine to say that you can have people voting in Lebanon because you're voting for French parliament. This concept does not work because the mechanism doesn't work. In 2017, we suspended the 2 articles in the law to allow the diaspora to vote. But remember, in Lebanon, there are 2 critical issues that we have to keep in mind. One is the diaspora, because the diaspora are not willing to vote for the ancien regime and for the political class that exists today. And we've seen it in the 22 elections. Their contribution was helping about 8 or 10 members of the parliament to be elected, and the so-called mega centers. Rob, in Lebanon, the law says that you have to go to your place of birth to vote. And when it comes to Hezbollah and the Shia community, and whereby the law was designed in order to control the regions that they have members of the parliament running in, they actually walk with them behind the curtains in order to see what they will be voting. So if we create mega centers, like technically what we have done in the diaspora over there in 2022, whereby you can register irrespective of where you are and go and vote. This, if we can do it in Lebanon across the whole country, I believe the interference in the outcome will become less, and we'll have more a transparent way of doing it. So what Hezbollah today is trying to do is trying to block the diaspora from voting by saying that there is a current law which twice has been suspended, the 2 articles in 2017 and 2021, and they're demanding that we should use the mega center. But remember, the law says mega center provided you have the magnetic card, which we don't have. So it means what Hezbollah is trying to do is hoping that both of these options for the diaspora and the mega centers to be cancelled. We are pushing Nawaf Salam, the prime minister, and I believe he made a mistake a month ago when he had the opportunity to present a law that will allow the diaspora to vote. He wanted to be nice to the Shiite community. He wanted to be nice to Nabi Berri. He wanted to be nice to Hezbollah. And for some reason, he refused to present it. Today, there is a cabinet meeting now as we are speaking. And our allies in the cabinet are demanding that this law should be transferred to the parliament immediately to change the law. Because remember, if we're going to be sticking to the May elections, it means the diaspora will have limitations by 20th of this month to register outside. And if the law is not clear, then there will not be too much appetite for people to register. And this is what Hezbollah is hoping for, that the diaspora will have very little vote and the mega centers will not be established, so they will have more rigging of the elections, at least in their region. Because their dream is to control the 27 Shiite members. Because remember, our parliament is 128. 27 are Shiites, 27 are Sunnis, there are Druze, and half of the parliament are Christians. But if they can control the 27 seats of the Shiites, technically, then we have no choice but to elect one of them as the Speaker of the House. And you know the way that the whole thing was being handled so far.
So this is a very critical moment for clarity on these two issues. Otherwise, in your view, elections are unlikely to be fully free and fully fair.
I agree with you 100%. And that's what we're hoping for our international friends and allies to start pressuring, the politicians that this law needs to be passed. We need to allow diaspora and we need the mega centers. And remember, the international community, because of their assistance, financial assistance and support, they have a lot of leverage at this time to try to make sure that the World Bank will not, and to tie in any further financing for Lebanon, that they will have a free and clear election so that will not have interference like we had before.
All right, since you brought up the issue of international leverage, I want to ask you about Washington. To a greater extent than at any time in recent memory, the United States is playing a major role in the day-to-day events in Lebanon. We see that we see a mechanism which has been set up, which relies on U.S. officials, U.S. military officers to help the process of disarmament, which is your government's responsibility. President Trump is a major player in Middle East politics generally. What do you look to the United States to do to help move forward this process of peacemaking, the process of the government fulfilling its disarmament responsibilities, and the process of holding free and fair elections?
Rob, we believe the United States is doing, really have been extremely helpful for Lebanon. You have been supporting our army, you're supporting our schools, our hospitals, our people. And more so, it's the first time in history we have a special envoy with the Lebanese ancestry. There are 3 presidential envoys that are basically dealing with the Lebanon file. We have an ambassador that will be coming up within the next a week or so from Lebanese ancestry. I mean, it's the first time that President Trump is saying, we love to help you. The bottom line, do you listen, Lebanese, and try to find ways in order to help yourself? Look, we need to make sure that between Witkoff, between Tom Barak, between Morgan Ortegas, between Michel Issa, we have an opportunity that we've never had before. 4 presidential envoys that are willing to help Lebanon. It has never happened before. We have an opportunity to capitalize on this one and to move forward. But my feeling is that it's about time to just stop being too nice. It means we have to show really some pressure that if the Lebanese are not willing to actually deliver on what they did on the 27th of November and start disarming Hezbollah and to stop the cash economy and to start doing reforms to make sure that we are moving on the right track, maybe it's time to start telling us this is not good enough for us. This is one. Secondly, you know that the only way that we can control Hezbollah, not only by disarming them, to stop their cash, to stop their the way that smuggling and all of this. And I think you can help us to establish all the processes that we can do it. And remember, you have the tool that nobody else has, which are sanctions. Sanctions that you have established today, and already I think the Treasury has announced new sanctions, okay? But this has to be expanded to include everybody that is not willing to be part of the change, that's not going to be part of disarming Hezbollah, is not going to be part of trying to stop the cash economy and to do the reforms.
So Mr. Makhzoumi is referring to an announcement out of the Treasury Department today about sanctions on the cash economy that is funneling money into supporting Hezbollah in Lebanon. So let me just close with a final sort of big picture, your view, Fouad, your view, Mr. Makhzoumi. When we look back a year from now, are we going to be closer to the prospect of real peace between Lebanon and Israel?
I believe so. Look, we have a possibility. Our people are tired. They are sick and tired of having to be defending causes that are not Lebanese. We are sick and tired of having to be taken to wars which have nothing to do with it. We were taken on the 8th of October, 2023, to a war which we had nothing to do with it. And the outcome of that is that the Palestinians suffered and the Lebanese suffered. And that, what did we get out of it? Zero, nothing. Okay, so it means enough is enough. We need to move forward. I believe peace is the only way forward. And a lot of people, they're trying to say, I mean, just for the record, when people say, that Hezbollah is refusing to negotiate with Israel, 1949, before even Hezbollah existed, we signed an armistice treaty. An armistice treaty, which means between two countries. When you look at the 1996, okay, we had an agreement, which is called the April Agreement. In 1983, the so-called May Agreement between Israel and Lebanon, we did that. When you look at the 2000, when Israel withdrew from South Lebanon, when you look at the 2006, when you look at the demarcation in 2023, when you look at the 1701 in 2024, what kind of a nonsense is this? That we do not want to negotiate with Israel, but we have signed 6, 7 agreements with Israel. Look, every time we attempt to play the stupid game of going to war and to try to justify an Iranian agenda in Lebanon, we destroy Lebanon and we all have to pay for it. I think enough is enough. We need to move forward, because if we cannot do it. Even our own constituency in Beirut, okay, the Sunnis are saying enough is enough. We would love to be part of this region. We see this prosperity that's happening in Egypt and Jordan and everywhere. So basically, why we are not going to be part of that? Look, we've seen what happened in Sharm el-Sheikh, that big scene that was there. This is something that will make you feel very comfortable that there is chance for partnership in order to move forward. What happened in Sharm el-Sheikh stopped any further suffering of the Palestinians. And now we can help them to move forward. So why not Lebanon? Look at Syria. Shara is going to be seeing President Trump next week. Okay, Syria, everybody was against Syria, and now is moving towards peace. So why we cannot do it? Because Iran is still interfering in our business, and we hope all of you in the United States to remember the elephant in the room, which is Iran, and without Iran, Hezbollah basically can be put under control.
All right, enough is enough. It's time to go to a new era of peacemaking. Thank you so much for joining us today, Member of Parliament, Fouad Makhzoumi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to move now from our discussion with Mr. Makhzoumi to a new panel discussion that will take a closer look at the prospects for building the foundation of peace between Lebanon and Israel, recognizing the still real and urgent needs of security between these two countries. And we're going to call on a panel that includes one of my colleagues, Hanin Ghaddar, and then calling in from Israel, Dr. Eran Lerman. So let me introduce our panel. Just one second.
There you are. I hope.
Okay, well, we are back now, and I'm delighted to welcome our panelists for this part of today's policy forum. Joining me here is Hanin Ghaddar. Hanin is the Friedman Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute. She is the author of this terrific path-breaking book called Hezbollah Land, Mapping Dahia and Lebanon's Shia Community. Hanin served formerly as the managing editor of Now Lebanon, Lebanon's premier English language news platform. And I'm delighted that she's joining us. And then from Israel, I'm very happy to have Dr. Eran Lerman. Eran is the vice president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, a reserve officer in the Israel Defense Forces. He served for 20 years, reserved for 20 years in the Prime Minister's office of Israel on issues of strategy and security. So I'm really delighted that you're both joining us today. As I said at the outset of today's discussion, there are Israeli military operations underway in southern Lebanon as we speak. That sets the context for a discussion of potential peacemaking, of course. Let me just say to all of our viewers that if you want to get into this part of the conversation, you're very welcome to send your questions through one of two ways. Either please use the Q&A function of your Zoom bar and pose a question there, or you can email me directly at rsatloff@washingtoninstitute.org. That's RSATLOFF at washingtoninstitute.org. All right. So let's delve into some details of this dichotomous situation, choice of war and conflict or choice of peace, security, prosperity. I want to ask each of you if you could describe the internal debate among Lebanese political elites and the internal debate among Israeli strategists and political elites about the potential with the other country, about the balance of peace and war. So, Eran, you're the further away, so well, I'll begin with you.
I thought the chivalry required ladies first. I mean, but if I'll take your orders, Rob. Look, there is no serious debate in Israel right now on the Lebanese question at the level of discussion of public policy, for the simple reason that there is immense preoccupation with the aftermath of the Gaza conflict. We're still waiting for the last 6 bodies to be retrieved. There is an ongoing internal crisis over issues of governance that I'm not going to even go into between the judiciary and the government. And in all respects, we are already in an election year. And there is no pro-peace faction looking at Lebanon, and there's no pro-war faction looking at Lebanon. This is basically relegated to an issue that the defense establishment, and specifically the IDF, should deal with. Now, taking note of the fact that we have a somewhat of a blowhard as defense minister who basically operates on the old principle that if you are a sort of hammer, then everything looks to you like a nail, then there is not much of a drive, I believe, at the moment from the relevant elements within the Israeli establishment to make serious concessions towards Lebanon in terms of creating the conditions for a diplomatic breakthrough of some kind. Right now, I'm saying this as things stand now. Moreover, there is a certain level of, let's say, post facto disappointment or sense of having made a mistake about the EEZ delineation deal negotiated a few years ago through Amos Hochstein with the previous Israeli government. And of course, the present Israeli government is very happy to denigrate this as a serious mistake, as a giveaway. Frankly, 780 square kilometers with fish in them are not necessarily a major concession as far as I'm concerned, but there is a sense that somehow we caved in to Hezbollah pressure or whatever. Not exactly what happened in my mind, but there is a sense that we need to be very cautious and very slow. There is a great deal of skepticism as to the gap between the really amazing spirit that we've just heard from Fouad Makhzoumi and I, two more of his kind, and half the region would be a lovely place to live in. But whether the Lebanese military, for example, is really ready to implement what it has been tasked with, given that a very high proportion among its ranks are Shia, and their loyalties are not necessarily to their direct command structure, but they somewhat goes sideways, that there is a deep and ultimately understandable reluctance to slide into an open civil war, as long as Naim Qassem and his men in Hezbollah are determined to hold on to their arms. So there is skepticism as to whether or not we can move forward. Moreover, there is a sense that given this reluctance, a degree of escalation, I'm choosing my words carefully, a degree of escalation may be useful. By the way, what we saw today was not exactly the general onslaught on southern Lebanon that has been depicted in some of the media. It was a set of pinpoint strikes against specific facilities in two villages, in Taiba and Terdba. And basically, people were told to move away from buildings that were marked for them by the IDF in advance, because we are dealing not only with trying to cut down Hezbollah personnel in South Lebanon, but also specifically the attempts to rebuild infrastructure, even to start producing weapons in Lebanon that once upon a time could come in from Iran through Syria. So Israel has chosen a very limited degree of escalation, and in full awareness that we have what is technically called escalation dominance. We can escalate as much as we wish. Hezbollah cannot. 2 years ago, before the 8th of October, we were afraid to strike one tent. Today, we've, in the last a month since the ceasefire, we've killed more than about 350 Hezbollah operatives. Not a shot was fired back. So we have escalation dominance, which paradoxically means that we are not in a hurry to escalate further. And that's more or less where we stand now.
All right, very, very interesting. Thank you. That's useful. That just to sum up, I'm hearing not a high priority, skepticism, and keeping in the back pocket this tool of escalation dominance that could be used if the Hezbollah challenge really reaches the boiling point. All right, Hanin, let me turn to you. How would you describe the internal debate among Lebanese political leadership and political elites on this set of issues?
Sure. I hear Iran's skepticism, and I understand, and this is not the first time I am hearing skepticism from the Israeli side, media statements, etc., and it's understandable. However, there is actually a gap between the Israelis and the Lebanese regarding perspectives of peace and perspective of moving forward beyond the status quo that we are in. The desire for peace in Lebanon needs to be heard by the Israelis. And needs to be heard more than this. And that's exactly why this kind of skepticism and hesitation actually to do anything more than just escalation, the way we are talking about, is exactly why the Lebanese government needs to do something. Because this waiting position, the status quo that the Lebanese government is actually not registering in Israel as a willingness to peace or willingness to move forward, is registering in Israel as a willingness to maintain the status quo and maintain Hezbollah's arms and not do anything. And the only other option is the war. Just to go back to your question, which is very relevant to what Eran that just said, it's the perspective is on peace, the debate on peace is on two levels. One, which is the very public, which basically a huge development considering how peace with Israel has always been a taboo in Lebanon and definitely was only hushed and whispered in very private spaces before October 7th. after October 7 and back, not before even the war, this has become part of the public debate. Media personalities, politicians, people, articles all over the place in Arabic, mind you, in the Lebanese press and regional press are calling for peace, simply because they understand part of the Lebanese want peace because they want peace full stop, and they do not mind peace with Israel. And because peace also means investments and prosperity, and Lebanon desperately needs this more, and desperately Lebanon needs it more than the Israelis does. But also for the large number of the Shia community, which basically they do not say it publicly, but only when you talk to them privately, a big part of the Shia community today understand that although there is no love for Israel, and we're not talking about tourism back and forth to the Shia resorts in the south and the beaches, but they understand that the only way to end war is peace. Because the alternative that has been dominant for more than 40 years, which is the resistance, is dead. People in the south, in the Bekaa and Dahi, understand today that the alternative of the resistance is no longer valid, that resistance failed, and they lost so much because of this alternative. The only thing left is peace. So it's really no longer a taboo. It's part of the public debate. It's part of the leadership's debate. Most of the leaders in Lebanon actually talk about it. And that's what Hezbollah is afraid of. Because once we start talking about it, we might do something about it. And this is where Lebanon is stuck today. It's all about talking about peace and negotiations with Israel, and maybe this is an option, but it's not really translated into practical steps. And this is where we are today. If Lebanon doesn't really initiate beyond statements, something tactical, something practical about, negotiations with Israel, including peace and a bigger picture, then the only other alternative is what Makhzoumi actually said, is inviting Israel to do more escalation in Lebanon. And then we will reach another ceasefire agreement, which was going to be different than the current ceasefire agreement, which will impose at least a timeline and more robust measures against Hezbollah and the Lebanese.
So just to sum up, I'm hearing you saying that there's an emerging debate inside Lebanon, but what the Lebanese are facing, even the ones that are aspiring for peace, is how to get Israel's attention, how to convince the Israelis that there's something worthwhile and serious to pursue here. So let me just ask you, Hanin, and then I'll turn back to you, Eran. Take that thought to the next step. What are the sorts of things that you think this government of Lebanon could do, practically speaking, that would get the attention of the government and the political leadership of Israel, and would at least begin to chip away at the skepticism that Iran, I think, quite reasonably outlined and characterized as the dominant view of the Israeli political leadership?
Of course, we can start with the whole disarmament issue. And if you don't want to confront Hezbollah militarily, although I think it's valid to confront Hezbollah militarily, it will not lead to a civil war. There are certain ways to, target Hezbollah's infrastructure that holds these weapons. That is the financial and the political infrastructure. And we can talk about many, many things here, but this is not the time and space for it. But just to give you a small example, the government has refused, there is a political decision in Lebanon to avoid confrontation with Hezbollah, but also there has been no action, concrete action made in order to target Hezbollah's political infrastructure within the government. That is, the appointments that have been made in the recent months have actually accommodated Hezbollah. And the Hezbollah's infrastructure, the financial infrastructure, the sanctions that happened today is a warning about the cash economy in Lebanon, how Hezbollah is using the cash economy in Lebanon. So this is something that the Lebanese government need to do: target the infrastructure of Hezbollah's weapons. The weapons will lose its meaning. But however, if you really want to initiate something towards peace, towards a bigger deal in the region, join the regional progress and prosperity initiatives, then definitely you need to do something. There are small steps that you can do, including abolishing the anti-normalization law that forbids Lebanese and Israelis to talk, to converse directly. This is something that it's archaic and it really needs to be eliminated. It helps Hezbollah and a lot of people in Lebanon and Hezbollah's allies to actually target many activists and dissidents, Shia dissidents, including me. Like they've been using the military court and use this law in order to go after Lebanese. This is archaic. This has to stop. There are many other things, but Lebanon needs to initiate, not just say we want negotiations with Israel, actually pick up the phone and call someone and say, let's talk. It could be the Americans, it could be the Israelis, it could be whoever, it doesn't matter. They need to initiate, they need to communicate that they are ready for peace beyond the statements and the whole, negotiating with Israel only to remove the occupation. That's not enough. Because this, if Lebanon doesn't initiate it, if Lebanon doesn't do any of these small steps and communications, then eventually the war will lead to an agreement that would include these things. So it's better for Lebanon to act sovereignly.
Okay, Eran, what would it take to chip away at that skepticism? You've heard Hanin offer a few suggestions here. It's a very crowded political agenda in Israel. On top of everything else, there's elections on the horizon. What would it take for Lebanon to get into this political agenda and to get the attention of Israeli political leaders about the potential for change?
Really, really, at the moment, the major change would be serious action at some segment against Hezbollah, particularly the Hezbollah presence in the south. As long as this does not happen, I don't think that there will be a major shift in Israeli opinion or a major shift in the place of Lebanon in this truly overcrowded agenda, political and professional at the moment. However, I could think of baby steps beyond those that Hanin mentioned, which are very important. I think if the abolition of the anti-normalization law would be a very dramatic event. I've been, often enough in places where Lebanese have been at the same time, and there were some of them courageous enough, of course, to converse, but the sense of coercion was very vivid to me. So if that is removed, that would be an important symbol. But let me also suggest another interesting idea. You know me enough to be an avid advocate of Mediterranean and Eastern Mediterranean affairs. Should Lebanon seek, for example, to join the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum, the EMGF, under Egyptian auspices. It would be a fairly natural thing to do, given the resonance of the EEZ issue and so forth. It will mean that Israelis and Lebanese will actually be together in a UN-recognized regional framework with a very practical and economic purpose. And so Eastern Mediterranean connections, or generally Mediterranean connections under the aegis of the new European Pact for the Mediterranean, would be one way for the Lebanese to be in the same room with Israelis without actually breaking the barrier of direct bilaterals. That would be a clear and useful signal, I believe. I'm offering this as an idea that is close to my heart. Israel could do something, I believe, that has not been mentioned here. I've heard it said that one of the reasons Hezbollah is entrenching now vis-a-vis particularly the Shia community is not so much Israel as an enemy, but the potential threat emerging from the east, the vengeful Sunni regime, which has gone after the Alawites and has gone after the Druze and may just well decide to settle the bloody account with those who've been partners in the butchery of the Sunnis in Syria, namely Hezbollah and the Shia community in Lebanon. And an Israeli indication that it would guarantee the sovereignty of Lebanon in the context of the ongoing negotiations, which are fairly open now, with Ahmed al-Shara's regime, that Israel does not intend to accept a Syrian disruption in Lebanon, that the Shia do not need Hezbollah's guns to defend them. I think that would be also an interesting, let's say, twist on our part that could resonate with the Lebanese. But I'm throwing up my own ideas at this point. As I said, there is not enough span of attention at the moment. And so we really need to look at small steps that will break the barrier, that will break the actual absence of Lebanon from any multilateral function, going back all the way to the early 90s and the post-Madrid or post-Moscow multilaterals. Lebanon and Syria didn't show up. There were bilateral talks. They led to nothing, but they never showed up under Syrian coercion in any of the multilaterals. A multilateral forum could be a place for Lebanon to indicate that things are changing.
Okay, very good. Hanin, do you have anything you want to add on this issue?
I like the idea of the Gaz joining the Gaz coalition. I think Iran is right about, there's no space, bandwidth, and focus for this particular issue. I tend to disagree in the sense that it is the space can be created if because this is an important issue. The space can be created when there's a will. And I think what we lack today is not really the space. What we lack today is the will to be part of this space, and the Lebanese lack of the will to be part of this space. All it takes is an initiative by the Lebanese leadership to say, we want to be part of this space. We want to be part of the general negotiations between under the auspices of the Trump administration for the purpose of stability, peace, prosperity in the region, including on the borders between Lebanon and Israel. So let's talk, and then we can resolve what this way Lebanon can, one, avoid another war with Israel, two, become part of the current regional dynamics that do not require a lot of effort actually to get Lebanon to talk to the Israelis, and three, benefit from whatever peace or agreement will bring to Lebanon, because Lebanon, the way it's happening today, we don't have a choice but be part of the space. And we have the capacity to be part of the space and create the space for this. It's really a matter of will, a matter of a political decision, which at this point is lacking.
So, Hanin, you mentioned in your comment just there the United States. Yes. So I want to ask both of you. I'll start with you, Eran, on this one. The United States is playing an unusual role. And a larger, sort of ironic that the America First president is playing a deeper and deeper role, even in the tactical issues in Arab-Israeli relations. U.S. CENTCOM now setting up a monitoring capability inside Israel. U.S. generals playing this very central role in what is called the mechanism between Israel and the Lebanese armed forces in Lebanon.
And Syria.
And Syria, of course. It is not too fanciful to imagine that the President of the United States might view the potential for Israel-Lebanon peace with a little bit more excitement and urgency than what you're describing for Israel's political leaders. If he gets excited about all this and says, well, let's move on this. Israel, let's move on this. Lebanon, let's move on this. what I mean, I think given the last year, I think we have to expand our imagination about the potential for American activity in this arena. What would you look for the United States to do to move this process in a more positive, hopeful, practical direction? Eran, let me begin with you.
Well, I was amused by the notion of, you remember that old song, Love Potion #9, and that would be Peace Breakthrough #9, as Trump counts them, should it happen. But given that, I fully agree, this is not an isolationist administration under any sense of that word, but it is. I thought I coined the term until I checked with ChatGPT, and turns out I wasn't the first. I call it transactional internationalism. It is internationalism, but it's very transactional. And right now, there's a lot invested in Gaza because the Qataris and the Egyptians and the big stakeholders, and of course Israel, are fully invested in it. There's not yet enough for the United States in Lebanon to incite activity at a level higher than that of Tom Barrack and Morgan Ortagus at this stage. So the symbolism of a more senior visit, let's say a visit that goes from Beirut directly to Jerusalem by the Secretary of State or by Wetkoff for that matter, and that indicates that signals that this is rising in the order of priorities, that could help. But most significantly, I think what the U.S. can do is line up in a coherent way the major potential donors and investors in the Lebanese economy, because what Makhzoumi has just told us about what happened to the Lebanese GDP is heartbreaking. It's been a country not at a cataclysmic war like, say, Gaza, a war, but one that did not affect much of the country in the same manner. And over years in which it was actually at peace, has declined very dramatically despite the immense potential of the Lebanese people, the country, its beauty, its remarkable resources that could be brought into play with the right level of investment. And I would obviously prefer the Saudis and Emiratis there than the Qataris and the Turks, for reasons that I need not explain here. But if the US becomes the convener of an international project that would signal the potential of investment in Lebanon in return for, let's say, a trajectory of normalization, not peace now, but a trajectory of normalization. I think that would be a major structural piece of work that the United States could do.
All right. So raising the diplomatic profile and promoting the prospect of investment and economic development inside Lebanon. All right, Hanin, what are you looking for from Washington to advance the peacemaking agenda?
Well, many things, but I would like to see three things per se. One, the ceasefire agreement that we had last November, the main problem with it is that it did not have a timeline. There was no deadline for Lebanon to do what it has to do. So Lebanon gave itself all the time in the world with no specific timetable beyond south of Litani. I think first, Washington should be very clear about, if there's no deadline in the ceasefire agreement, then Lebanon should hear a deadline from Washington in terms of disarmament. But sticks alone doesn't work. There should be repercussions, of course, if this doesn't happen, and the repercussions should be very clear. including, coordinating with the Israelis, but also, as Makhzoumi said, there's a huge set of tools that can be used, including sanctions. We saw something today, but should be more serious about sanctioning people who are hindering, actually, one, the disarmament efforts, two, everyone who should be really against eliminating the anti-normalization law once it becomes on the table. And this brings me to the second point, which is basically put this on the table. Abolishing the anti-normalization law, along with other measures that need to be done in Lebanon to help the Lebanese actually communicate with the Israelis, need to be basically presented by Washington with a clear deadline. Three, which is the bigger package, can come to Lebanon and say, this is the deal. You can do this. This is the deadline for disarmament. This is what we need from you in terms of incremental steps that actually we have mentioned in our report 2 weeks ago. And this is the package. Lebanon is in shambles economically. It needs this much for reconstruction. It needs this much in investment, and it needs this much for reforms and political and economic recovery. There can be a package, something that Iran also mentioned, that would bring to Lebanon, say, this is the deal. This armament will bring reconstruction, but also if you want more, if you want real recovery, this is the package. But in return, we need to start talking seriously. But Washington cannot do this unless Lebanon initiates some kind of willingness to get there, because the other alternative, obviously, as I said before, is another war, another confrontation that would lead eventually to the same. So we need to correct the main issue of the ceasefire agreement and go from there.
All right, very good. Eran, I've received a couple of questions from viewers, and I'd like to try to get them into our conversation while we have a few minutes left. You said at the outset that, Eran, you characterized Israel's military operations in Lebanon today as, I forget your exact words, but this is not the big operation. These are pinpoint strikes at a couple of... What would trigger the big operation? Do you see this on the horizon? Is Tom Barrack's warning really a prophecy about where things are going, or can you see a more peaceful alternative path that can achieve the goal without another major military operation?
As a student of the paradoxes of strategy, anyone who read Ed Luttwak's work would know that strategy has a kind of corkscrew logic to it. The fact that we can escalate all the way, and we are now in a very different situation. Iran is terminally weak. Syria has flipped from friend to foe as far as Hezbollah is concerned. And now we are actually in a position to go in and do in Lebanon as we wish, without having to worry about far-reaching consequences in a wider regional arena, except perhaps that the Houthis will resume their nightly sleep disturbances for Israelis. But so we can, but paradoxically, because we can do it anytime we want, we are in no rush to actually go all the way to another round of intense warfare, which after 2 years of exhausting efforts for the Israelis and for the Israeli military, and once again to call up a huge amount of reserves and so on. So I don't think there's a sense of urgency in going in that direction. But as Hanin suggested, this is not entirely without a time horizon. If down the road, and probably let me speculate, not in this election cycle, but which is probably coming in less than 1 year. But if at a certain point in time, if nothing else helps, I could see Israel going in to clear the land all the way, at least to the Awali. and decimating Hezbollah to the point in which the Lebanese government would have no difficulty dealing with what is left. That could happen down the road. I don't see it as something that is around the corner.
Okay, thank you. Hanin, there's a question that I received regarding Lebanese elections next year, and it builds on the comments that were made earlier by Fouad Makhzoumi and the what needs to be done to ensure that the elections are fully free and fair with the full participation of expatriates. When you look at the elections, what to you are the prospect that the outcome will represent this new Lebanon, this Lebanon that is in the wake of the Israel-Hezbollah conflict, representing a weakened Hezbollah that represents a more hopeful prospect toward peace? Is the political system ready and prepared for an election to present that outcome, or are we going to have more or is the likelihood an outcome that represents the old Lebanon? And so we have an odd situation where the strategic situation may have changed, but the politics is still reflective of the old Lebanon.
Yes, the politics are reflective of the old Lebanon. And at the end of the day, we need to understand that the person who's actually inherited or succeeded Nasrallah today is not just Naim Asim, or like on the military side, it's Hezbollah, but on the political elections, financial side, it is Nabih Berri and co. The Speaker of the House, the head of Amal. This is the guy who is actually running the show today, and he's the one who is going to be managing the elections within the Shia area. Hezbollah has a lot of money. Berri has a lot of money for elections, more money than any other party has, and they still have arms. So in general, even if we get the diaspora votes, even if we get everything, like the diaspora voting for the 128 MPs instead of only like diaspora six MPs, this is not enough. I don't think that anything major is going to change with the current electoral law, with the current situation where Hezbollah has the money and has the arms to intimidate and buy voters. So honestly, to be honest, completely honest, and this is what a lot of Lebanese have been also saying, I've never said this before, and I don't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think we should have elections at all before Hezbollah is no longer armed and powerful within the political system. Full stop. If we really want anything to change, if we really want to translate the change that we've seen in a year on the ground, in the political system, in the parliament, and the next government, etc., and the next appointments, we need to understand that the current political dynamics are not enough. I'd rather wait a little bit and push for disarmament and push for more, more push for Lebanese to take an initiative to do more disarmament and wait for the next phase where we can actually hope for democratic elections. Because today, although the Lebanon has a semi-democratic elections inside the Shia area has never been democratic. And we know that. There's a huge difference. There's election in Lebanon and there's elections in Shia areas. If you want real elections within the Shia community, we need to wait. Because we cannot afford another 27 MPs for the Berri Amal duo, Berri Hezbollah duo, and having another Speaker of the House from that pool, and then more obstruction for another 4 years. We cannot afford that. Lebanon cannot afford that, not just politically, economically, security-wise. We cannot do that. I'd rather wait and see real change than actually go for elections for nothing.
Mm-hmm. So we're ending on a very on a headline note, suggesting a link that there should be, if I want to sum it up, suggesting that there should be a linkage, a connection between disarmament and the next election, so that there's a full national level playing field, that only one party in the government, namely the Lebanese Armed Forces, is the sole armed element in the country, which would ensure that there's a playing field for politics that is equal throughout the country. Very interesting, very provocative. I want to thank both of you because we've come to the close of our time. This has been a fascinating discussion. I'm hopeful that we have what more to talk about in the weeks and months to come on the idea of Lebanon-Israel peace. Thank you, Eran Lerman. Thank you, Hanin Ghaddar. And thank you all for joining this special Washington Institute Policy Forum.